Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning for part 2 of the CUNY Career Compass for Women's Leaders Conference. My name is Naisha Howell, and I am the Chief of Staff to the Interim Vice Chancellor of University Advancement and a conference committee member. Last week, we kicked off part 1 of the conference, and I'm happy to report that 2,336 women participated in the conference. Yes, 2,336 women engaged at some point throughout the day. In part 1 of the conference last week, we had a dynamic keynote speaker, Mir Joshi, who spoke about her journey and how she navigates male-dominated industries as a woman. Kenya Lee moderated a panel with 3 of our college presidents. We had remarks from a few of our trustees. The chancellor opened up the conference. Denise Patrick spoke about creating your leadership success roadmap, and Denise gave us homework. So I hope everyone did their homework. Our breakout sessions included conversations on how to prepare for the executive search process, developing your interpersonal communication skills, the purpose of networking, self-care, and your executive presence during the time of COVID and beyond, and also on building your personal brand. Today, we want you to have another meaningful day. Grab your coffee, your tea, your pen and your paper, take notes, network, and do me a favor and take some of the tools and tips back to your respective campuses and continue these conversations. Most important, have fun and enjoy your day. I wish you much success on your journeys. I'll take a moment to introduce the next speaker, who's our very own Board of Trustees, Sandra Wilkin. Sandra is also the CEO and founder of Bradford Construction Company. Yes, let me repeat that. The CEO and founder of Bradford Construction Company. Sandra is always ready to help us out. She was with us last year. We kicked off the first conference, and she's back here today to speak with us as well. Thank you and have a great day.
Good morning, and thank you, Naisha. I'm so honored to be sharing this time with you today, our CUNY family. You see, we're talking about developing executive presence, and it's a huge topic, and so many of our CUNY professors have contributed great classes, wonderful books, and terrific research towards understanding it. So when you look through how people define executive presence, you get great ideas. Ones that tell you how to dress for an important meeting, how to project confidence, how to appear as an executive, and how your outward appearance towards others matter. Others, though, seem to focus a great deal on the characteristics that tend to make up what men think executive presence is: handshakes, voice levels, power ties, owning the tallest building in a city, and I'm sure you get the idea. But all of this can help us better understand the idea of executive presence, what works, what doesn't. For what has always been critical for me is that executive presence is something that you cultivate from within. It is the fortitude you rely on when everyone around you thinks your ideas are either no good, when when people are around you and are doubting you, and when everyone around you thinks you don't belong. It is that passion, your grit, your light, your force that tells you you are right to do this, you are right to say this. And I know a little bit about that. You see, I grew up during a time when in high school, in the 60s, boys took woodshop and auto shop classes. The girls took cooking and stenography. And it was understood there was one track was preparing the boys to become men for the workforce and the girls to become women working at home or as a secretary. Even going to college wasn't necessary a priority at that time. It would take the women's rights movement in the 70s to change our views on women in the workforce and college, and it did it for me. I recall seeing protesting in the streets, Betty Friedan, Congresswoman Bella Abzug, and Gloria Steinem advocating for change. And wow, did they have some presence. I saw the force inside each of them, what we know today that we call executive presence. And I began to trust a little bit of my own internal force. As I watched them protest, I really wanted to match what they had. So imagine how surprised people were when I not only went to college, protested for women's rights, but then changed my mind on careers, choosing to go from nursing school to wanting to be in the building industry. You see, I had an opportunity while going to school and helping on a healthcare project that was construction related. I got my first inkling on what it is to be in the construction industry, and I was totally hooked. I wanted to stay in healthcare, and I could do that by helping to build hospitals. Plenty of people told me this was a horrible idea, that women had no part in the building industry, and that I was way out of my depth. I did everything I could to learn about construction, and always being the only female in a class or at a bid meeting. So in the 1980s, I did what any reasonable woman would have done during that time. I started my own contracting company. And that was in New York City. And I can remember early on when I attended a meeting with other contractors, other males, of course, male contractors, we were all bidding on the same project. I remember walking into that room and seeing the smirks, each one probably thinking, oh, what she thinks she's doing here. Someone even asked me to get them a cup of coffee. You can only imagine what my answer was to that. I knew in that moment that I could either stay and see this opportunity through or run from the room and never return again. I chose to stay. And guess what? I got the project, and I knew I had to develop and rely on what we call now executive presence to get that project built. I knew I would need to walk into many, many more rooms and would need that confidence each and every day. And I knew that confidence would have to come from within. You see, your executive presence, I believe it's something that you just don't turn on or off when needed, but it's something you build over time when you are constantly put in situations that challenge who you are and what you want to do. To me, it's that force of your internal GPS system, the direction you feel you want to go. There are so many readings on executive presence, but one that has stayed with me is an author, Stephanie Dennings, who wrote an article in Forbes about Oprah and the secret of her success. And not that in any way I or anyone can compare themselves to Oprah Winfrey. Who can? But her story meant so much to me on how she launched her career. So she told the story of wanting to leave Baltimore to go to Chicago, where she would start the show that launched her to stardom. Everyone around her told her to stay, except, of course, her closest friend, Gayle King. Many tried to dissuade her from leaving, doubting that she would ever make anything of herself. Here is what she had to say about executive presence and that moment when the world seemed like it was against her. Our societal interpretation of success leaves very little room to support a decision to meander down an unpaved path, which is why it can be so much easier to extinguish any light inside of you rather than stoke the flame. I think about that last line a lot. So much easier to extinguish any light inside of you rather than stoke the flame. Executive presence is the decision we make in the moment when we think no one is for our ideas, that we choose to stoke the flame rather than extinguish the light. Each obstacle you encounter in life is a moment for you to build your executive presence. It is a moment to keep that light inside of you burning. Oprah's advice: you are your own best guide, but you can choose to ignore it. You can choose to ignore it or listen, and the fog will clear. What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we have. What you'll notice is when you're speaking your truth, that others will start to follow. That is the part of executive presence that brings people along on your journey. At first, my journey in the building construction company was daunting and intimidating. But I found a few other women in the same situation. So we got together and co-founded the Women's Builders Council. Now, our many strong voices are heard for the inclusion of women-owned businesses in the building industry, advocating for legislative and policy changes here in New York. That's when you start to notice the effects of your own executive presence. Once you can lead yourself internally, you can lead others. I wish I can give you a simple formula for executive presence, but instead, it's not a formula, but a force. It's really a force inside you that you develop through putting yourself in challenging situations. Then you must use that light inside you to speak your truth in those situations. Each challenge in life is a chance for you to develop your internal GPS, to fan the flames rather than extinguish them, especially to have that great inner force in order to bring others along with you. I'm reminded of one more thing that Oprah said. Challenges are gifts that force us to search for a new center of gravity. Don't fight them, just find a new way to stand. I know these are tough times at CUNY. It seems as though we all have many tough decisions to make each and every day. But these challenging times can be an opportunity to continue developing your executive presence, to push ahead when others tell you that's not a good idea and it's not the time. So extinguish all of those internal fears and issues. Extinguish them so you may stoke your flame, may speak your truth, and make sure that you may be able to have the force to be with you. Thank you and be well.
Thank you, Trustee Wilkin. Thank you so much. If we were in a room with people, I would say, let's give it up for Trustee Wilkin. We are incredibly lucky to have Sandra Wilkin as a trustee on the CUNY board. She is a role model to so many people. Imagine, she has her own construction company. Talk about a male-dominated industry. When there are all these men in the room, in walks Trustee Wilkin. And she has the power. And what she does with it is she encourages other women. She encourages people of color. She encourages the diversification of the construction industry and so many others. She is a role model. She is someone we are incredibly lucky to have. I'm incredibly lucky to call her my friend. And I can't thank you enough. I'm still thinking about my internal GPS, which I think needs a little tweaking sometimes, or maybe more than sometimes, and stoking the flame. And let's talk about speaking our truth and letting the light shine. Sandra, you've given me a perfect entree introducing our next guest, who is Diane Billings-Burford. Diane Billings-Burford is someone who speaks her truth, and she lets the light shine through herself and onto others. She's a rock star. Diane and I met during the Bloomberg administration. Now, I'm not going to tell you that she went to Yale and Columbia Law School, and I'm not going to tell you that she worked at a large law firm and then went to work for the city where she was the chief service officer and created NYC Service that brought more than 1 million people into volunteer opportunities to help fellow New Yorkers. And I'm not going to tell you that she went to Time and then she went to run this organization, Rise. But I'm going to tell you about the Diane Billings-Burford that I know, the woman who, when I had a meltdown in my office just a few years ago, dropped everything she was doing and with a colleague came to visit me and brought a bag that said Supergirl. I mean, to me, that says everything about what a friend is. And just last week when, yes, again, I was having a meltdown, Diane was right there with me saying I should stand in my power. So I'm standing in my power, and I am extraordinarily lucky and honored, and I'm thrilled to introduce my friend Diane Billings-Burford. Yay, Diane.
Thank you. Good morning, Andrea. It's so awesome to see you.
It is awesome to see you.
And you so left out, I mean, I think anyone that knows you, I sincerely think for the most part, we get what we put out, the energy we put into the world. So me and others do that for you because you do it for us all the time.
Thank you. I appreciate you. This is like a love fest going on. So let's talk about you and what you're doing and your career is like. And we don't have a lot of time, but I want to make sure everybody hears about you, your journey, and your words of wisdom and what's gotten you to where you are. So tell us a little bit about your past, your career path. How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, well, I'm excited to be here today. Listen, I almost always start out with telling folks I'm just a girl from Brooklyn. And that actually makes me really excited to be a part of this CUNY event, even if virtual, focused on women, right? Because I get what it is to be a woman in this space. And so I'm a girl from Brooklyn before Brooklyn was cool, before Brooklyn was gentrified. And in some ways that was challenging, but in some ways it was just such a blessing. I had a wonderful family. I still have some wonderful family members. And you know, whereas I don't think that folks should like grow up in want, in need, or in poverty, I do think having come from like lower middle class, maybe some would say less than that, there's some lessons I've learned about work ethic and about myself and about what matters and about values that I think come directly from that experience. I'm good at taking tests. Everybody has gifts. I always encourage women in particular, figure out what your gifts are and feel good about leveraging them. So I'm good at taking tests. I went to a program, Prep for Prep, and through Prep for Prep, I started going to private schools in New York. I went to Grace Church School in Manhattan for 7th and 8th grade. And then I went to Poly Prep in Brooklyn for high school. And you mentioned where I went to college. I went to Yale. I graduated Yale. I still remember saying to my mom when I got to Yale's campus, I was like, Mommy, I heard about this thing called a gap year, and I'm kind of tired. Like I think I want to take a year off too. And back to that kind of that certain socioeconomic background, my mom looked at me and she said, Dada, May 1994, I'm gonna be on this campus and I'm gonna need to hear your name. So there was no gap year. So it was a great concept. It was great for some, but in retrospect, now that I'm a parent and supporting a household, my mom was making just really great sacrifices and loved it. She felt it a blessing the way I feel it a blessing for my children, but she was tired, and so went to Yale, went to work right after Yale because I really had enough of school. And I love telling this part, especially because we're talking to women. I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and I also wanted to run a not-for-profit. And I started working, and my mom was like, be careful because life happens. And lo and behold, I applied to law school, but I was a college counselor, and I thought I was exhausted because I was working on my applications and my students' applications. I couldn't get my energy back. I go to the doctor and I found out I was expecting, right? Just like the reality of being a woman, and life happened. So I did go back to law school, but I went back after 5 years because I needed to defer a year because my child was literally due the month I was supposed to start law school. And so I started Columbia in 99, took 5 years off. And then the rest, I bet we'll get to it, the career from there. But the truth is, I was just so understood the impact that a quality education had on my life. That's where I spent a good bit of my career at the beginning, working on the equality of educational opportunity. And then again, we're going to get to it, but that led me to many different organizations, opening charter schools, the mayor's office, where I met so many people that I consider family, including you. And from there, I went to Time Warner, wanted to spend some time in the corporate sector. And then I am now leading Rise. I'm back in the not-for-profit space. And again, I just think it's a critical time in our nation's history. And I felt like this was the place for me to be and the place to provide the best value from what I had, from what gifts I have.
Well, you sure do have a lot of gifts. I want to say that you have two beautiful children, including Rodney Jr., who is the reason you took 5 years off, right about there. And he's a rock star, and he was the star of a web show on Netflix called Deaf You, which I watched and loved, and you're in it too, and I love seeing you there. And you have a daughter, Emmy, who is at George Mason University. So you have managed to balance that work and life and done it so extraordinarily well.
Yeah,
so
I love what Sandra said. She was mentioning just words of wisdom from Oprah, and I gained so much from just listening to her speech. I had the occasion to moderate a conversation with Ursula Burns, who is one of the few Black women who is a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And I love what she said about balance. She said, listen, Diane, the thing about work-life balance is something is always out of balance. She was like, it's balance over time. And it was so important for me to hear that at that point in my career. She said, sometimes you're gonna over skew towards being a mother and family. And sometimes you're gonna feel like you're over skewing towards work. She's like, but you gotta take the broad view and look at things in totality. And so I really appreciate her because that being able to do it all and that perspective on balance really helped me.
And Ursula Burns was the COO of Xerox company, right?
Yes.
And she is talk about someone who really paved a path for others to follow in her footstep, including serving on a lot of corporate boards that we still need more women to serve on. So we're all women here. And I should also mention that you're an AKA.
I am.
We have 4 people in top level jobs in the university, including 3 college presidents who are AKAs, and our senior vice chancellor, Glenda Grace. Yes.
Oh, that is amazing. Go us. By merit and by culture. I love it.
So I want to talk about, you're a woman, you're a person of color, you're a Brooklyn girl, I'm a Queens girl. You've faced challenges, we've all faced challenges. Can you tell us a little bit about those challenges that you've faced and how you've come through it and
Yeah.
what you learned from that?
Yeah. So I think it's important. The older I get, the more I am thankful. I was raised in the church, and sometimes when I was younger, I'd be like, "Oh my goodness, am I in church again?" But it did really,
Church is an
right.
important
It
place to be.
instilled this, right. Like my moral compass is pretty clear, and I do think, in answer to some of what you suggested, really values and faith and direction have helped me. It is impossible, right, as women and as a person of color. I literally live in a society that has systems of oppression in place that do not seek to work for me, right, on both of those axes, both by my gender and by my race. That is just the reality. I spend a lot of time talking to people about the reality of systemic racism. And it's really, I think it's good that as a country, we're beginning to have that discussion more and more. So I think when being in that situation, one outcome is, okay, so I won't achieve. But another outcome is I will achieve. I just have got to figure out how to do it in this system that is built to oppress me. And so, that looks different ways. I often tell the story. I love, after Sandy, one of my real proudest moments was to put up 16 food, water, and supply distribution centers across the city where folks were in need, and to play my part in that. And after we did the immediate needs, Mayor Bloomberg appointed borough directors to help really corral intermediate needs and improve our communication and providing for folks. And so I got Queens, which I did say, Mike, I'm not understand why I got Queens, because I'm Brooklyn. But anyway, Nasli got Brooklyn. But I got Queens. I don't know if anybody knows, like Office of Emergency Management is an agency, PD, fire, you had not-for-profits and people from Lilco and other companies would come together for meetings. And I had been at the meetings, but right after Mayor Bloomberg named the borough directors, I walked into the meeting. Folks saw me outside. They saw me get out of the car with my driver. I had on my mayor's office jacket. And literally, they sat there around that room and waited for the mayor's person to come. And I let them sit there for 15 minutes. I took the time to answer my emails on BlackBerry that was attached to our like foreheads back in the day. I answered my email. I did what I needed to do. And then I started the meeting. And for many, I noticed, obviously the shock on their faces. And so again, I love what Sandra shared about executive presence. I couldn't agree more. We have to be purposeful. We have to know our gifts. I would say that it's not the first time I've been in a situation where folks are just surprised because as a woman or as a person of color, I'm holding a certain role. But one of the things I say to women all the time is what's real in its perception is real in its consequences. So I don't accept the perception that I am any less than or I'm not a leader. And so the consequences are I'm not any less than and I am a leader. And so I think for women, we've often got to be thinking, what are the perceptions of me, but more, what are the perceptions that I accept? Because once we accept it, that perception is real in its consequences. And so that's the biggest thing I would say to folks. As the kids say, the hate is real, but the real question is, what are you going to do? And how are you going to manage, your choices?
I really like that. What is the perception and what are you going to do with it? What are we going to, how are we going to react, right? How are we going to move forward? You kind of were standing in your power.
Trying.
You're
and sometimes we fall, sometimes we falter.
And we need people like you to remind us how we need to get back, stand up and move forward.
Yep.
I have so much I want to ask you. So talk about working in a male-dominated area. You're
Yeah.
now working for RISE, which is an acronym for Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? And I know you have a program coming up, I think on March 30th with, among others, Val Ackerman from the WNBA.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit.
So RISE, it's really interesting. Folks may realize the R in RISE stands for Ross, as you said, and that's Stephen Ross, who is at Related. He's also the owner of the Miami Dolphins franchise. And so Stephen and a few really key people got together almost 6 years ago now. And this is prior to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, but they really said, if there is an issue in our country that's holding us back, it's race. And part of the reason why it's holding us back is because we don't talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. We don't feel comfortable. We don't address it. And so it prevents us from moving forward in that space and all of its consequences. And so they started RISE. And I came on 2.5 years ago as CEO. And so one of the things we are crystal clear on now is that our mission is we educate and empower the entire sports community with an effort to eliminate racism, champion social justice, and improve race relations. We're primarily an educational organization. We run multi-week programs across the nation. I'm proud to say last year, even in the midst of the pandemic, we ran programming in 36 states. So we run programming with high schoolers. We have a significant collegiate presence. And we also do quite a bit of work with the professional sports world. And to your point, the professional world tends to be male dominated. You know, I just got inquiries about, and I think good inquiries, I'm not questioning them, about me diversifying RISE's board. And I shared with someone, I think that's very important. And here's the reality: 14 of the spots on my board by our bylaws belong to the commissioners of the major leagues and the heads of the sports, many of the sports segments of the networks. Every single last one of those positions right now, nope, minus one, is headed by a white man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We have Max Siegel at USA Track and Field. And so, so I do spend a lot of time with men, white men. They tend to, I guess they're about my age and a little older. And then I think another difference in us, and I think it's good, is we talk about the privilege of class, right? So also dealing with folks that are well off. And so, because as we talk about race and we seek to educate across the country so that we change our reality around systemic and individual racism, you know, class plays a role in that. And so I will say this, one thing I have learned is actually me and men are like usually pretty good. I mean, yeah, that sometimes they're shocked, and then when they get over the shock and, you know, I'm in charge, then we're okay. But but I think as a woman, one of the things, especially a dominant woman, we struggle when we make people feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
We struggle not to intimidate people. We struggle with feeling comfortable with ourselves because being ourselves may be making someone else feel less than.
Yep.
And the truth is, I will say in this industry, I don't run into that much, right? So I don't know if that's because I got people with strong egos and they're dominant. I much less worry about, you know, like, am I too dominant or too direct in this space? And so I really like that about this industry for sure.
Well, you're amazing at that. And I love bragging to my sons about which players that you're talking to, although I can't remember. Mahomes plays basketball or football, whatever it is.
Football,
I know.
Andrea, you were so close. Football. And what a great young man. What a great young man he is. He just actually recently, individually, and he doesn't often tout his own work, but he just supported, back to the systemic racism, the HBCU bowl game, right? So he literally, you know, folks are really making moves now and saying, okay, where do we see things in our space that we really could course correct by making individual actions? And so he's, as far as I know of him, he's a good guy. I don't know him well. I'm not pretending to be his close friend, but I'm impressed thus far.
And you do amazing work talking to these people one-on-one or in panel discussions, talking about the issues of equality and equity in sports. I'm being told I have to, close this up, which is hard to do because I could talk to you for a long time. And I want to also say that RISE has been doing work with John Jay College and is going to be expanding and doing work with other schools at the university.
Yes, we are so excited. Come on, this is my hometown. Yay. One of the things we didn't mention is one of the ways we define social justice is through civic engagement. And so we ran over 90 events last year, all focused on increasing democracy and civic engagement. And many of them were in the collegiate space. So we're really excited about expanding this partnership with CUNY. This is a huge year in New York City. We all need to be really thoughtful about the elections that are in front of us. What do we want for our lives? And how else do we want to be engaged? How else do we want to be civically engaged in creating kind of the community that we want? So I'm excited about our partnership with CUNY, but I want it to be bigger, bigger, bigger.
It's going to be. So we have to wrap up. So what is your mantra? What is your best advice? We've got over 2,000 women listening in, and they work for CUNY. And how do we as women, and how do women of color, how do we all own being Diane Billings-Burford? How do we stand in our power? How do we, hold on to who we are while recognizing others may treat us or do treat us differently?
Yep.
Go for it.
I have this line, I share it with everyone: purpose, not fear. I seek to make decisions from purpose and not fear. It is my mantra. It is easy for an intelligent person to rationalize why we should or should not do something that requires courage. And usually that is us allowing fear to guide us and fear to make our decisions. I think for women, we have to think and feel and spend more time reflecting what did we come to a particular place to do? What do we want to create? And then that is your purpose in that moment. I don't believe people have one purpose for life, but decisions need to be made out of purpose and not fear. And I think it has guided me well. It has made for some scary moments. It has made for some challenges. And the truth is, right, if I want to be honest, as we all sit and talk together, I have had moments where I have made choices out of fear and not purpose. And while it felt more comfortable, I paid for it later. So
I hear you.
Purpose, not fear.
Purpose, not fear. I love it. Diane, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with us, really, particularly today. And I know you've had some other things and unfortunate, things that have happened, but I so appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. You are I just love you. I just
love you more. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And if people want to connect with you, are you in LinkedIn?
I am. I'm not fast. It's not a fast response, so don't be surprised, but I am there.
Okay, well, they can check you out and become a friend, and they can also look up information about that panel that is on March 30th and is open to everybody, right?
Yeah, and risetowin.org. If you come to our website, you'll see stuff and be able to contact the office and me through there as well.
Thank you, Diane. Yay, Diane.
Yay, okay. Andrea. Yay, CUNY. Go CUNY women. I'll see you guys later. Women.
Hey, and you're going to miss, I'm about to introduce 3 presidents, one of whom is a sister, AKA. So,
ooh, well, I'm going to at least stay for that so I can see her face.
So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Kenya Lee, who is the Chief of Staff over at Baruch College. And she is going to be speaking with 3 of our college presidents, including Christine Mangino, who is the president of Queensborough Community College, and Daisy Coco de Filippis, who is the president over at Ostos Community College, and Carol Mason, who is the president at John Jay College. So Kenya, I will let you take it from there.
Good morning, everyone. So today's lineup has been amazing thus far. And the lessons that I learned this morning is one, stand in your power. And the second message is make choices with purpose, not fear. And so we'll have other lessons that we'll learn through today's fireside chat, as well as through the remainder of today's program. So I'm excited to be here with you today for a second fireside chat and to be able to speak with three more of CUNY's most esteemed leaders. So just as a reminder, today's conversation will be guided by a set of questions. And I will try to incorporate some of the attendee questions that we did get in the conversation. So first, allow me a few minutes just to touch on just a few of the highlights of the biographies of today's leaders. I'd like to start with Carol Mason, who is president of John Jay College. President Mason served as the United States Assistant Attorney General and head of the Department of Justice's Office of Justice Programs under the Obama administration. She also served as Deputy Associate Attorney General from 2009 to 2012. She led the Office of Justice Programs from June 2013 to January 2017 after being nominated by President Obama and confirmed by the US Senate. Prior to that, President Mason spent almost 3 decades at the Alston and Bird LLP, where she chaired the Public Finance Group. So welcome, President Mason.
Thank you.
Our second panelist today is Daisy Coco de Felipes, who is an interim president of Ostos Community College. Prior to that, President de Felipes served as the president of the Naugatuck Valley Community College from July 2018, retiring in August 2020. In this role, she was the first Dominican president of a community college in the United States. Prior to that, she served as provost and senior vice president for academic affairs at Ostos Community College. Additionally, she served as professor of Spanish and Latin American literature. And let's not forget that she's also a published author and literary critic. So welcome, President de Felipes.
Thank you.
Our third panelist today is Christine Mangino, who is president of Queensborough Community College. President Mangino formerly served as provost and vice president for academic affairs at Hostos Community College. She is an alumna of the Aspen Presidential Fellow for Community College Excellence. She began her tenure at Hostos as an assistant professor for early childhood education in 2004 and had continued on to serve as coordinator, chairperson, associate dean for academic affairs, and interim provost. Prior to Ostos, President Mangino taught as an elementary school teacher and later on as an adjunct at St. John's University. So welcome, President Mangino.
Thank you so much.
So good morning and welcome, ladies. So I'm looking forward to a delightful conversation with you all. So I want to jump into things and touch on this past year, which to say it was challenging would be an understatement. So what have been some of the greatest lessons that you've learned during the year of the pandemic?
So I could start with that. I think a couple of years ago, I was actually on a CUNY Central committee where we were trying to identify a platform that we could purchase to help us do online tutoring, online advisement, online admissions. And it turns out we could do it ourselves as a system, right? We have the skill set here. So I think that was one of the greatest things we've learned as a university is how we can support our students in a remote environment with the same sense of care that we do in person. And I think also, how we came together as a community to really support our students and help them still be successful while taking care of their well-being.
And I'm not sure how you want us to go, but first I want to say, I think that I'm missing something because I don't have an Ostos connection. I feel deficient. But I want to say that for me, the biggest lesson in this COVID experience was listening to your team and giving them the space to speak up and lead. At John Jay, we were prepared. Well, we have the unfortunate distinction of having the first positive case in the CUNY system. Yes, we are responsible for shutting down the system. But we were prepared because the 1st of March, we were supposed to have an active shooter training. And someone in the provost's office on his leadership team said to him, and he said to me, we need to convert that to a COVID plan. We didn't even have the word COVID then. We need to convert that to a meeting to plan for coronavirus. And instead we pivoted and had that meeting and began intensive planning. And so when that unfortunate event happened, we were ready because somebody spoke up and said, you need to do something different. And from that point forward, I created this COVID leadership team that was a really broad-based team across the college and encouraged people to speak up because we needed their voices so that we would be prepared. And we were prepared. Our head of IT spoke up early. He noticed at that meeting and he said, I'm going to start ordering laptops now because we're going to need them. And so he got Zoom licenses early before people even knew what Zoom was. And so for me, I learned how important it is to listen to the voices on your team, which means the entire community is your team. And everybody's got a perspective and a voice that's important to hear.
So I like to say that I had the great challenge of dealing with the pandemic on 2 campuses.
Mm.
In that I was in Negative Valley where I had served. It was my 12th year as a college president when this thing hit us all. And part of what I did then, and then some of it I replicated when I went to Ostos in August, is to be able to have, above all, there was a training, of course, communications that were very frequent for me to the college community in multiple ways and inviting others. So this weekly letter or bulletin that went out to the college had voices from student leaders, faculty leaders, the academic leaders, everyone who was dealing with some of those issues. I felt that above all, the most important thing was to keep the human connection, to talk about our values, and to encourage folks to feel that they could share with me. Got multiple letters as well, and was in constant communication, both with students, faculty, staff, was made myself very much available. And that with precisely what Carol and Christine have described, the issue of organizing and having teams and all of that. For me, it was communications. And then one other piece I added when I came to Ostos was this Ostos Culture Talks or Veladas, which was poetry readings, book presentations that the faculty had written, community voices, and that has become a pretty terrific instrument as well during this period of making sure that we keep the spirit, keep us together. We also had the challenge when I came to Ostos that we're in the process of writing a self-study. So it was good for me to put all the pieces, the recommendations from my predecessor and other things that needed to be, and then have also the Middle States planning team headed by 2 faculties, a wonderful team, over 100 people, communicate regularly, so much so that in the middle of the pandemic, we've managed to complete this. We're going to have the original schedule for the self-visit, which is next spring. So that we have everything, the chair identified and all of that. So that has kept people feeling a sense of purpose as well, and very much appreciated for every step I celebrate. I've become a real cheerleader in that regard.
Thank you. Now to follow up on that question, how can leaders use crisis as an opportunity?
Oh, all right. I might as well continue then. It is all right. I think, first of all, if the crisis makes it very clear to you what your values are, what the mission of the institution is. And you write that as close to the mission as you can, maintaining the values and also understanding that you have to be flexible, that these are, and that you have to trust. I keep telling them sometimes, okay, we planned and then life happens, right? What is today may change tomorrow, but today we continue to move forward, and that has helped. I think that for me, it's really just staying really close. The college has a very powerful presence in the South Bronx. It's a very poor community. And no matter who the president has been over the years, there's been this real sense of embracing the mission and the community, understanding that we are needed there. And And so I think you do that, and then you figure out. There are other things that experience brings about. You look at your budgets, you look at who's doing what, you look at what needs to be put in place and processes. But it is staying close to your values and the mission, as close as you can, always.
I agree with Daisy. I think it's important. I am an eternal optimist. And so I am strange that crises don't rock me. They actually make me feel more comfortable, because then you have an opportunity to make difficult decisions as a group together, because you know you have to. You have to come together to deal with things that are hard. And I think that in a, as Daisy said, one thing that was that really gave me and continues to give me confidence at CUNY is we have a leader whose values are clear, and who I happen to share his values, which is why it's so great to work here under his leadership. And so he made it clear that he was going to be leading with his values. And so he set an example for us that we could follow, that you make clear what your priorities are and stick to those. You make clear what's important and you stick to that, and it gives you a sense of clarity through a crisis.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, change is scary for everyone, right? So we, sometimes as an institution what you need to do, but it's hard to get there. And I think with the crises, you realize how quickly you now need to pivot to make those changes. And it brings you, like Carol said, it brings you together as a community, so that there's a sense of community as you're going through this together and making the changes together. And it makes you stronger at the end.
I want to circle back to something that President Mason touched on. You talked a bit about your leadership team. So the question I have for you all is, what do you look for when you're building a leadership team?
So, and it's Carol, please. I won't know who you're talking to if you don't.
Okay.
There are no students on this call, so they're the only ones that I have call me president. So that, for me, my process in this job is the leadership team developed over time. And so it's not as if I went in thinking I'm going to build a leadership team. I think it's important coming in to any organization. I did the same thing at the Department of Justice, is to meet with people, listen to people, hear what they think is important, because I think it's a mistake to come in and think I know what we should be doing. Hear what's been happening. And then thankfully, my experience has been that the leadership team has evolved as where we were going became clear. Then it became easier to figure out, as people left, how to fill those gaps once there was clarity around what our vision was, what our mission was. So when I started, the graduation rates at John Jay were troubling, to say the least. And the prior provost had already put us on a path to success to work on that. So Jane Bowers laid out a plan, Dean Dara Byrne laid out a plan. And so coming in, we decided to figure out, how do we get the whole community to embrace student success? And that gave us something to coalesce around. The next thing we did was our strategic plan, gave us something to coalesce around. So as those priorities became clear, it became clearer what I needed to fill the gaps in the leadership. But I didn't come in thinking, oh, I know what I need. I need to see where the institution was and what the needs were.
I agree with so much of what Carol said. I think part of the job description is that we're going to be lifelong learners, and that we are going to learn from those around us, and that circumstances require certain things. So in my case, for example, I came in, and as you know, Christine had been the provost, and also having been a faculty when I was the provost. So we have, and so the question came that, I'm so proud that she's the president there. And so the question came to, how do we deal with this? And so we chose someone, and we chose, because I say it was Christine and Esther Rodriguez, who was a senior VP there, who helped me choose an interim provost from the college. And there have been some vacancies now because some folks retired and there were some changes, and all of them have been filled from within, because I am trying to I was familiar with the college, but the college evolved, so I'm learning more about that. Ultimately, in the 12 years that I was president, as changes came in the administration, I tried to find strengths that were different from mine so that actually I had something to learn from everyone and everybody could bring to the table. I don't know everything. As much as I love to read and learn and continue to and do that, I want people around me who bring strengths that sort of add to the value of the team. And so I respect differences very much and understand that part of what is so wonderful about this position is that we get to continue to grow as human beings and learn and make a difference. Above all, that we make a difference for our students.
So I would say yes and yes. And I would add that, that they have a value of caring, and that students are number one priority in everything that we do in all our decisions. And again, that they're the experts for their areas, right? And are willing to roll up the sleeves and do the hard work that's needed. And that they respect and work well with the other team members, right? Because together we have to be a cohesive unit, right? To help move the institution.
And can I just add one thing, Kenya? So for me, my style is I process out loud and by debating things. And so for me, it's critical to have a leadership team that will speak up and will feel comfortable disagreeing with me publicly, respectfully, but because we all need to be respectful of each other. But I need people to debate things out loud and consider things from all perspectives. So having varying perspectives at the table is important, or you don't get those different voices and then those different perspectives. And so it's been important to me to create an environment where people feel comfortable speaking up so they will be heard. And I hear that she's on the call, so I have to give a shout out to that was Kim Chandler, who had the courage to say, no, you don't need to do an active shooter training right now. Well, this is what you need to do to prepare for coronavirus. And I was heartened to know that I'd created an environment where people felt like they could speak up because it put us in a position where we could succeed through this challenge.
Thank you. Now, we did get a question from an attendee who wanted to know, how did you adapt your leadership and management style, particularly when you had to pivot to lead in a remote work environment?
So I could start. I began at the college in August. So there are, 99.9% of the people I have not yet met in person. I have not even met all of my cabinet members in person. So I was really trying to figure out how to get the campus to know me as a leader, as an individual, and how for me to understand the culture of the campus, and to build this trust through this two-dimensional world, right? So there's a challenge when you're not sitting in a room with people and you can see who's making eye contact with who and who's, they're looking at each other based on something somebody else said, and you don't feel the energy and the emotions that are happening. But I think, I've managed to be able to do that with lots and lots of, individual meetings and small groups and mixing people up. So I'm meeting with them not from the same division, so they're free to speak. I've done a book club every month so that, anybody on campus, I've had college assistants sign up and stuff so that you really get to, in a more relaxed environment as much as you can in Zoom, get to know people. And it's been wonderful.
I will say that Zoom has actually provided an opportunity to participate in more things than I otherwise would have, because I don't have to run from place to place. And so for me, I learned from the young people because I watched how they embraced Zoom. And I remember at one of the year-end festivities last year, noticing how the students engaged with each other and how excited they were to see each other by Zoom. And I said, okay, I can see this as an exciting tool and not something that's just this foreign way of interacting with people. And so it's enabled me to show up to lots of events that are happening across the campus because I don't have to physically try to figure out how to get there. So I go to the faculty talks to the extent I can. I go to student lectures. I go to everything that's happening, which means I don't have boundaries around my time. Somebody asked about balance later. I'm anxious to hear that answer. I don't have it. But it does give us the ability to be present and show up in ways that were harder to do in person. And I will say, Christine, I actually find Zoom a little better to read the body language because I can see everybody on the screen. And so it's a little bit disconcerting for some people, but I could, because in a room I'm having to look this and this way, but I can see them all. It doesn't give you the personal touch, but I can watch and see if somebody's body language is that they're uncomfortable with something and ask the question.
So this is everything that both Christine and Carol, most things, I read a book with a cabinet every month, and is a book. I gave a list just to sort of start the conversation, and they chose if the books that they wanted to discuss, and some chose to use their own recommended text. I found also the Zoom, and I really like to walk down the hall and give hugs and all of that, which I know that will never happen again with all these threats of viruses being with us for the rest of my days. But the one thing that was really helpful, when I got there, first of all, the students wanted a Black Lives Matter event. So we had the Black Lives Matter event, and like 100 people showed up. And that followed up, then we created in our office with faculty and a colleague back from Nagata Valley, my old place, who's really wonderful with this stuff, and the Black Arostos workshops that have been taking place by Zoom. So people come from everywhere to, sometimes some unwanted visitors, but they come. But we did, for example, queer poetry in Latin America. It was an issue put together by the Ostos Review that they had done before I got there, but it was just finished. So we were able to host poets. It was a bilingual thing from Peru, from Chile, from whatever, from different parts of the world that would not have been able to participate. We had the Dominican Studies Association conference. There were something like 40 nations and 600 people attending at any given time. I was just this for Women's Day. I was with people in Switzerland and Barcelona and what have you, speaking about women leaders not too long ago. So I think what keeps us from that personal touch has also allowed the conversation to be broader and more frequent. I agree. I mean, I'm busier now than ever. It's just amazing how the days just go from one, and they invite me to this and bring greetings for that. And they're having a faculty launch an article or what have you. I'm involved in that regard. I also offer for those who are brave, because I am on campus a couple of times a week, once a week, 3 times a week, depending. I offer some of the, and I have met with something like 40 legislators from my area, from other areas, just to plead for community colleges and CUNY. I offer a cafecito and a Dominican flan, which I make, and I offer that to you ladies anytime you want to come in for with a mask in a conference room with space, and we serve coffee, and I make this flan, and everybody seems to like it. The office loves it, as well. And it's something about talking about leadership and being who you are. I am a Dominican woman.
So I look forward to that flan.
You're coming, Carol.
I'm just raising my hand for that now.
Okay. All right.
So I want to switch gears a bit. In reviewing your biographies, it is clear that you all have 3 very distinct tracks to the presidency. So what made you aspire to be a college president, and what was your pathway to the presidency?
So I think I'm the most non-traditional, so I'll start.
Yeah.
I didn't aspire to be a college president. The opportunity presented itself. What I did aspire to do when I was at DOJ, I was the first President Obama's first term. I had to approve the travel for the then director of the Community-Oriented Policing Services Office, and Barney Malakian was always coming to John Jay. I was like, what is this John Jay? And you can't keep going to the same place all the time, until I understood what John Jay was. And I said, oh, yes, you can. And then I started partnering with John Jay when I was when I was the Assistant Attorney General. I gave myself a promotion by accident. And then at some point I put on my list, I was going to the Senate Chaplain's Bible study on Fridays, and I was so impressed with the work of John Jay and the work of CUNY. I grew up knowing about CUNY because I'm from Amityville. And I put on my list, I want to be the president of John Jay College one day. And I put it aside and I thought, that's never going to happen. And then Jeremy decided to step down. And one of my policy advisors came into my office and he said, did you hear about Jeremy? And I said, yeah. He goes, you know, that's your dream job. And I said, yeah, but I've got some other stuff I need to do. And he kept pounding me. And so when it came time, but the reason why I wanted to be the president of John Jay for two reasons. CUNY, I grew up knowing CUNY. I have family members that have gone to CUNY, and I know it's the great equalizer, the giving people opportunities to change their life course by getting a college education, and that is CUNY's focus. And CUNY, John Jay's criminal justice focus and social justice focus, I was like, that's what a beautiful marriage of two things that I think are critical. And so I didn't want to be a college president. I wanted to work at John Jay because of the work that they do, and the community that I entered at John Jay lived up to everything that I expected. Didn't say it was easy. For those of you listening from John Jay, you know my first 2.5 years, I'm just going to be candid, were hell. It just was. But we've turned a corner. And again, I think that having Phalo's leadership is critical in that turning that corner, because leadership matters, and knowing that I have the support and guidance and somebody to learn from, because you need to, as Daisy said, you need to be constant learners. All of us need to constantly learn and support each other, and knowing that we have a CUNY leader who thinks our students are so important and their success is so important. The issues are still the same, but I walk through the day differently because I so believe in his leadership.
So I agree. I never wanted to be a college president either. When I was looking for a doctoral program, I did not want to do it in administration and supervision. That was the clear path for an elementary school teacher, was to then become a principal. And I said, I just wanted to be a teacher and be the best teacher I could be. And when I started at Ostos in the early childhood program, the chairperson at the time said to me, you know, you would make a really good college president. He's like, you have the disposition. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not leaving the classroom. But then they needed a coordinator. And when I got to see how you get to see a different view, right? And you see other things above you that's impacting it, and you can make change. So now, instead of making change for the 30 students in my class, I was making change for the 700 students in our program. So when the opportunity to move to a chairperson came up, I'm like, yeah, because now I could make change for the whole department and not just my unit. And after doing that for a few years, I'm like, well, you know what? Now I want to go up and make change at a different level. So I started looking, you know, for a dean's position, and the one at Ostos had opened up. And again, I wasn't going to go further than that because I wanted to stick with faculty and curriculum. But again, in order to really make systemic change, so it wasn't until being a provost for a couple of years where I'm like, you know what? As a president, I can now really lead an entire institution, right? All focused on student success. So that's what's driven me.
Well, you are looking at someone who was born a very curious child. I was curious, and I love to read. I also love to go visit with my grandmother, her old friends, and hear stories. So part of my style is that I do tell stories. And I learned from my grandmother to love poetry. So I'm an immigrant. I'm the CUNY alumna of the century, in that every degree that I have is a CUNY degree. Queens College, bachelor's and master's, and then the Graduate Center, the PhD. So what I wanted always, I was always in love with my teachers since I was a little girl. And when I got to the United States, I saw this young kid who who loved to read. So they sort of mentored me. Queens College, I was shy and quiet until my Jewish women professor and my Puerto Rican professors, because there were no Dominicans or anybody like that. So I always rely on kindred spirits. Saw the potential, and they said, "Oh, Daisy, you could do this. You could do the Honor Society. You could do this," and they encouraged me. And then I landed in heaven when I went to your college, because it was a department that was one man and all women. They were all Amazons. I'm telling you, I began to teach thinking that this is all I want to do, teach. And they would say, Daisy can do this and Daisy can do that. And what that helped me was to find kindred spirits, to realize that it transcends everything. I could have friendships and collegial reports with just about anybody across the college. And that happened through a very important tool for me, which was the Faculty Senate, because it was a way for me to get out of the department, as nurturing and wonderful as it was, and then begin as when I was elected to be the leader of the Faculty Senate, I began to see then from the perspective of a college-wide thing. It resulted, by the way, some people didn't like it. It resulted in my writing an article about some of the things that were not happening there that should have been happening for our students, and made at least one or two administrators a little upset. So the last thing I thought I would be an administrator. And with the sort of like Christine, a new president came in, it was a woman, and I was in the search committee, and actually was going to take my first sabbatical ever. And I was home in the sabbatical, and she called me and she said, Dr. De Filippis, I really need you to come. I need your help. And so she mentored 3 women who were at York, who were all faculty, and she gave them dean's position, associate dean's position, and learned from her more than I could tell you. And then also what I should do, what I should not do, I also learned from her. So it was a 4-year learning experience. And then I went back to the classroom. There was a lot of writing I was doing as an immigrant, trying to find myself back home. I came when I was 13, so my dissertation and everything had been going back, and became actually some of the books that I wrote became hits, because why? There was a Dominican history that left out many women from anthologies, from the histories and what have you. And so I began to fill gaps, and so on. So I was doing that sort of separate. And then the opportunity came after I went back to the classroom that they said, Daisy, they really need you at Hostos. And you should consider putting in your application. They were looking for a provost. I have to say this, my entire family, except my husband and my middle son, I have 3 sons, all have great opinions like their mother, said, what are you doing? Why do you have to be such an immigrant? Can you just settle down, write your books, run your department, teach your classes? And I said, that's the one bilingual college in the system. And they think I can help. And so all along it has been, so people find that, I'm not that direct. It's always somebody recommending me for something. But the one thing I found out is that the more I advanced, the more I learned, and the more I could help, and the more people I could help, until I finally said, I'm comfortable. I do want to be a college president. I think because I took this walk from an adjunct faculty to an academic dean and then a provost, that I could do this. And I have not regretted it, because it is an opportunity to live by your values. And for me, it's to give back to public education. Public higher education is everything in this country. It's everything. I mean, look at me. Look at me. Who would have thought I should have been lost? I came when I was 13, and it was my teachers. And the fact that CUNY, I hate to say this at that time, was tuition free. If you maintain a B average, you could do that, at Queens College. And then they gave me a fellowships, research fellowship when I went to the grad center, and teaching opportunities while I was getting my master's. So CUNY really, I am so very grateful to CUNY. I just want to see how many people I can help, because I was helped by many.
Now, one of our attendees asked the question, if you could share one of your greatest career challenges or barriers, and how did you overcome it?
Okay.
So it's interesting. It isn't one, it's a recurring theme. And it was interesting hearing Diane and the previous person talk about her experience when she walked into that meeting. And they sat there for 15 minutes waiting to see who was going to come in to lead the meeting. I've had that experience through every step of my career. I remember being a senior associate at the firm, but in charge of this transaction. And this partner who was working on the deal too refused to come into the room until a partner, meaning a white man, came into the room to lead the meeting. It was my deal. I was in charge of the deal. I had to go down the hall and get some white man, one of my colleagues, to say, I was like, Jim, just come in this meeting because he's not coming in the room. Then I proceeded to lead the meeting. I think years later, he forgot that ever happened. I never forgot it. And I just found it interesting when he, that he had no memory of that, but it doesn't ever stop. And so I remember my constant theme is I tell people, I exceed other people's expectations for me every day. And I'm okay with that. And, I don't let other people define what I'm capable of doing. I've had people in this job at John Jay. I'm in my own office. My picture is quite prevalent in my office. I've had people ask me, so what do you do at John Jay? In my office. I'm like, well, I'm actually the president. And I find it more embarrassing for them than for me because I'm trying to figure out how do I let you're going to be embarrassed when I give you the answer. And so my advice to folks is don't let other people define what success is for you or how you achieve. Just do your thing. Be you. Do the best you can. And you'll exceed their expectations. I hope that people's expectations eventually change. But at 63, with it still happening, I worry. But you just have to keep, trusting yourself, finding good people to support you. Some of them are on this call, so they'll know I'm talking to them. Having what they call themselves, and I love it, my angels. People that are there to support your success and who will enjoy your success. To me, that's what's important.
I'm going to second everything that Carol said in this regard. I remember being the president of Nagato Valley and having this big community meeting and having spoken publicly. And then we were in little circles, and then this person comes up, and my provost, who's a tall white man, she went directly to him and addressed him as the president of the college. And it was a she. It was a she. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm not as polite as you, Carol. So I did say to her, take a look at me, because when you can accept that I'm the college president, you will accept that you could be one leader too. Okay, so that was one. I had also my pet peeve of many of the little mortifications that we overcome was, you always try to figure out at meetings, when do you enter? When do you talk? Especially when it's a group of peers. I remember being at a Connecticut, I'll use a Connecticut example, president's council meeting. And it was live. We were around the table. And there we were. There was the president of one of the largest school. I won't mention her name, although I love her to pieces. She had served for 20 years as a college president. I was, at that time, maybe serving 10 years as a college president, and there were several. And then there's this young man who's been appointed 6 months into the job of being the president of the tiniest community college in the system. And so then he takes the podium there, whatever, and begins to pontificate. So I had one of those moments, men, the book Men Explain Things to You, right? Men explain things to me. I had a men explain moment, except again, I'm not that polite. So I said, Mike, I think I have to tell you this as a young administrator, and you're young compared to the experience around the table. I recommend for the next 6 months, you listen to what these experienced administrators are saying, take some notes and learn, because it's totally inappropriate for you to think that at this point, you can preach to us. I thought my supervisor would have a stroke. I was calling to his office. We had a conversation about that. I said, I'm not taking it. I am not taking that.
So I'm not sure if I'm picking this one because it's the most recent, right? But I think, having transitions, which all of us did, right? In the spring semester as a provost to make sure that all our classes were ready to go, but at the same time interviewing, right? And transitioning to QCC. And so making sure that I'm leaving OSTOS in the right place, right? And with all of the right information that everybody needed, at the same time learning, what I was going to need in that quick changeover. I think that was challenging to do that in a remote environment, especially, and with, so many moving pieces in the middle of a pandemic.
Thank you. I want to switch gears again here and talk and ask you to speak a little bit about your experiences with being a mentor or being mentored during your professional journeys.
I'm glad you asked that question and gave it to us. I think that what I want people to hear is your mentors don't have to look like you. Your mentors don't have to be the same gender. They don't have to be the same race. It'd be great if they are, but they don't have to be. And your mentors also don't have to be people who are in a position that is higher than your position. Those who know me know that I don't like hierarchy. I see a horizontal world. And you can always mentor somebody. I get mentored by our students. Our current and the past student body president have mentored me greatly in understanding how to conduct our town halls. I am a lawyer by training. I spent 30 years practicing law, which meant I got paid to fix problems. So whenever they'd raise a problem at town hall, I figured, I'm winning if I fix the problem. And they kept saying, you're not listening to us. You're not listening to us. And I had not fully understood how important it was to simply just listen and not have an answer, not have a resolution. So my answer is everybody can mentor you. And I am fortunate that when I came into the legal profession, there were no women, there were no Black men, Latinx men, anything. They were just white men. But I came at a point where they had daughters who were about to go to college and enter the professions, and it finally clicked for them. Oh, I want my daughters to have opportunity, which means that I need to mentor these young women here at the firm that I'm working with now. And they became my biggest cheerleaders in terms of providing opportunity. So don't think that you know what your mentor ought to look like.
Yeah, I think I try to informally mentor, colleagues to hear, what are their aspirations and how can I help give them an opportunity, right? Whether it's an extra project to give them the experience or, openings that are coming up and how do I help prepare them for that? And then I had the privilege of mentoring someone through the CUNY Harvard Diversity Institute, right? Which I thought was a fabulous experience. And then I've had 2 official mentors, and most recently, one through Aspen and one through CUNY, where it's been such a wonderful experience to have somebody to be able to call and bounce ideas off that, at a peer level that I hadn't had in the past. So I totally enjoyed both of those experiences. But I think it's important, especially for women, to look around you and see where do you lend a hand, right? And help people and not make it seem, intimidating.
I have, in fact, in my letter where I was given the honor of being President Emerita when I left Connecticut, what my supervisor highlighted was the fact that I had mentored so many people, students, faculty, staff. He said, including himself, which I don't believe. I don't think he needed any mentoring from me. But I also use the Hearst Institute, Wellesley, to send every year. While I was the president, I sent a good 4 or 5 of our women who were in either faculty or middle management to take their course. They invited me to be part of a roundtable every year with other presidents to discuss leadership. Why would I do that? Because I had, as I said, in those your college environment. I go back to that. When I became faculty, the women, because it was mostly women in that department, said, Daisy, there's a panel. I remember this, just finishing my dissertation. There's a panel for the MLA, and somebody dropped out, and this MLA meeting was coming up in December. This is October. You need to send a proposal. But I said, Gloria, are you kidding me? I'm beginning to teach. She said, Daisy, you got a PhD, figure it out and send your proposal. And that was my first panel participation ever. They just push and they say, you do this, you do this. When I became head of the faculty senate there was because somebody said, you've been secretary for 6 years. How much longer you think you want to take notes? Don't you think it's time that you do this? And then, and then they coach me, especially the men in the history and philosophy department. Listen, they said, when you hold your meetings, don't get a big room. Now that doesn't work with the pandemic. It has to be small. So people can say, Daisy holds standing room only meetings, right? Whoever thought of that? So the attendance and many little ways to do so. I'm always listening. I'm always willing to learn. And because I always felt that I was such the recipients of so many generous gestures. And like Carol said, they cut across gender, race, color, everything. Because what you look for always is your kindred spirits, people who have your values, and they find you too. And then it's your role to also find them. And one last thing on this, in Connecticut, they used to assign mentors. So when I got there, I had a wonderful mentor, Wilfredo Nieves. So grateful to him. We had lunch once a month, and would go over things. And then when I got more senior, I was assigned to mentor a new president, and I replicated in her case. Carly Drummer was her name. She began at CUNY Baruch and then became a president of one of the colleges in Connecticut, and now is a president of one of the SUNY. And I learned from her. Here I was supposed to be so experienced. She comes into my life as we're getting ready to do a capital campaign. And she said, Daisy, these are some of the things that you need to do. And this is how you're going to organize that. So we ended up actually having lunches, helping each other figure out how to do the next thing.
Kenya, I think she just called you into a presidency. She said that person came from Baruch. I think that she just spoke.
I have to tell you that the other thing I want to say, my executive assistant back at Naugatuck is finishing her doctorate. I see her soon as a VP for students because she loves students. My secretary got a bachelor's. So now I'm pushing where I am. Because I think part of it as well, and for CUNY, for us as leaders as CUNY, we need to find ways to help. And this is a glorious university with so many opportunities to encourage those who are helping us do the work that we do and shine, for them to shine. So I encourage them to write things. Now I just encourage for the first time my assistant to write something for the Semanario on an article that she read in the New York Times about Jewish women and against the Nazis. So she wrote it. So I said, I'm so proud of it. So she's going to read it now when she does her seed of her family. So what I'm saying is that you let them shine, push them, but also have within CUNY. This is a wonderful opportunity, but many others that are more tailored to the areas of interest, and take them up wherever they are, whether they're secretaries or directors or deans or assistants. They all make our lives so much better and our students' lives so much better.
Carol, to your point, I'm not going to rule out a college presidency. I mean, I will say this last year has looked very stressful from my view for any college president, but I'm not ruling it out. And I will say that I had a boss who's encouraging me actively to really look at it. And he's the reason why I'm even in a doctor program at Northeastern now. And I'll call him out. President Emeritus Mitchell Wallerstein is the one that really has pushed me to think for that next level. And to that point, there's ACE did a college president study back in 2017, and it had a very, I would say, astounding data in which it noted that only 30% of college presidents are women, and only 5% are women of color.
Mhm.
And my question to you all is, what can not just higher education institutions, but the industry in general do a better job at in supporting women and women of color to seek out these executive level positions, VP, presidencies, get them into this college presidency pipeline?
I think it's being intentional, right? Like Carol and Daisy just did, right? Looking and seeing who's out there with real talent and helping, push them and nudge them and get them to see that, there is a path and help them along that path. I think it's vitally important. Those stats, and then you look at the statistics of, the majority of elementary school teachers are women, right? And more college faculty, especially in CUNY, are women. Why does it stop at that point? How do we make sure that people see that there's a path for everybody's leadership?
And to Christine's point, I think programs like this, I think that CUNY has done a great job in investing in programs. I know that several of our people have gone to the Harvard program and there are other programs, but I think you've got to be intentional about telling people that you see what they can be. So it wasn't an accident for me to say to you, Kenya, I need you to hear that you can be us. And
Right.
we need to actually say that to the people on our teams, because I think that it's a stereotype, but I think that we as women don't seize the opportunities ourselves, but to see our own potential. We're waiting to be, we do the best job and we think the opportunity will come. But you've got to be intentional. And so we need to be, those of us who are in these jobs need to be intentional about pulling people along so that they've got the opportunity to do it as well. And when we get calls, because we all get calls about names, putting those names in the mix.
That's right. I want to just add a little bit here, which is, I think, was mentioned by our keynote speaker, our trustee Wilkins, which is to trust yourself and to know your value. And I think also look at I always say when I mentor, look at what they're offering you and look what the average male salary is in that area, and begin with conversations about knowing your value and being paid. Because once you get in, there's always going to be a crisis, and there's never going to be more money to give you any other recognition. Your stay with it, at least in public higher ed, as I've seen it, is you negotiate your entry salary and you know your value, but you also take a good look. And then also negotiate when you go into it. What are the opportunities that the company offers for you to advance?
And we're not a good negotiators for ourselves. So people need to hear Daisy. I gave that advice.
I have to tell you, I learned the hard way. I learned the hard way, Carol. I'm only giving advice from experience, okay?
And so am I. I cease to take my own advice. So I recommend that you talk to somebody else, because I'm great at negotiating for somebody else. And so get somebody to
no. I'm now, I have to tell you, I think I tell them, you go over there and you say, this is, and also, believe the thing that I want you all to know is we all get into, I was teaching and I love teaching. And, people say, Daisy, do this and that. But the other thing is begin to trust yourself so that you are not afraid. When sometimes opportunity comes and you have this fork in the road, like the poem says, and I took the road less traveled by, and I have been so much better off for it. Take that road, take a chance on yourself, trust yourself. We have been told many, many times, and there was a whole language of women, and I'm into language, so you'll hear a lot from me about language. That we're nurturing, which is true, we are nurturing, that we're caring, that we are passionate, but they also don't mention the fact that we are collegial, intentional, goal-driven, inclusive, respectful, data-informed, and researchers. All right, so there's usually, you get this 4. nurturing, articulate. And you said, we're being put in a male pedestal. We're everybody's mom. Well, yeah, we can be everybody's mom and still lead as we do with the right behaviors that are necessary for a leader to succeed. So don't let anybody talk you down. I was on tenure and I gave somebody, they wanted to dump somebody to teaching Spanish there who had skills, and it was a friend of the provost, and they sent it to my class. The department knew I would be the only one to actually speak up. So I gave a bad evaluation. And he called me in and I said, how could you think so little of our program? He goes, sweetheart, you're raising your voice. And I answer, I'm not. You just don't like what you're hearing. So you're going to say some things that some folks may not want you to say. Make sure that when you do, you are very low key, very calm, very deliberate, very intentional in your message, so they don't muddle the waters and say, oh, that, what did she have? What was it that the former president said about one of the interviewers? She must be that time of the month kind of thing, if you're young enough, that is.
Can I just add one thing that I think it's important for people to find their own leadership style. What works for Christine, what works for me, what works for Daisy, what works for Kenya is not going to work for everybody else. You've got to find your own. And I came through at a time period where we were told to emulate the male leadership style. You don't have to do that. I'm so glad that we're beyond that and that people can figure out what works for you. But I think the key thing is to be respectful, and that includes respecting yourself and
Absolutely.
setting boundaries about how people relate to you.
Absolutely. So ladies, we are upon our final question. How do you measure success as a leader?
I would say that the people around you, your team, is also successful, right? And that they have grown as their own leaders. And that what you put in place stays beyond your tenure at the institution, right? That you've been able to change a culture and move the institution all in the same direction. And then obviously student outcomes, right? You want to see our students graduating, right? We can't be an open access college and not have, access for everyone to completion. So making sure that that happens, but that, you've left your mark in a positive way on the institution that will stay long beyond your tenure.
For me, success in this job will be that people are working outside of silos, and there's a collaboration across and common vision and common support across the college. To me, that's success, because that people are engaging with each other, sharing ideas with each other, because the solutions and the progress depends on everybody collaborating and rowing in the same direction. So that's my measure of success.
I think success is knowing that the work that you are doing and the college is doing is real. I am not big on image, I'm big on substance. So part of, I feel successful when I know people, my colleagues around me and our students share the values that we're trying to strive for and the mission that we're trying to accomplish, but also that the way we present ourselves and the way that we do bears a close look, can be assessed, and for us to be truthful. So there'll be things always that are we are aspirational and we succeed in many ways, and there are other ways in which we need to continue to work and perhaps consider other ways to approach the problem. I think it's really important for us as leaders to know, to believe that what we do is true. So it's not, it has to be real. The work at the school is real, and the problems we have are identified, and we do in our ways. However, it's impossible sometimes the task might be. we're being sincere in the way we are addressing, because in the end, it is about transforming lives. Nobody transformed lives more than CUNY. And certainly in the South Bronx, nobody has transformed lives more than Hostos has over 50 years.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. I was fiercely taking notes, as I'm sure everyone else was. A lot of lessons learned here, a lot of gems. So thank you, President Mangino, President De Filipis, and President Mason for taking time out of what I know is a very busy schedule, to share your insight and your wisdom. And I think our entire audience really appreciated our conversation today. And I just want to just leave out a note just to share some of the things that I took away. One is crisis makes it clear that what your values are and that you have to stay close to your mission and values. I heard it's important to be present and to show up. I heard don't let other people define what success is for you. Don't let other people define what you are capable of. And I heard trust yourself, take a chance, take the road less traveled. And finally, find your own leadership style. So ladies, on that note, thank you so much. And we're going to turn the platform over now to our next speaker, Denise Patrick. Denise Patrick is a lecturer at Baruch College and CEO of D. Patrick Consulting. She is a leadership and communication consultant. Denise focuses on individual and team communication, leadership, organizational change, and innovation. So Denise, you have the floor, and everyone, I hope you did your homework.
Thank you so much, Kenya. I appreciate that. Very warm welcome. And just to say this publicly, it is always a pleasure to get to work with you, Kenya, on all the projects. On every single project that we get to work on. It's always a pleasure to do this. I am thankful to be here again for round two, for part two of this roadmap to success. And I think I'm going to launch actually my comments off of what I just heard Kenya summarize from our wonderful CUNY sister presidents from Coco de Filipis and Mason and Mangino. Thank you so much for your words of wisdom, and thank you for your honesty and your candor. The one thing that I think that I would launch off for this week is going to be to take the road less traveled, and how convenient for us to have a word like this, considering that this is embrace the journey and creating your leadership success roadmap. So to start off with how this will run, we've got about an hour together. And because this isn't really a breakout room, so to speak, I don't get to see any of you really, but there is a way that I'm going to try to connect with you in at least two different ways. One of them is going to be for, if you look at the bottom of the screen, and I'll just kind of point to it like, right here, right about here, we see it says go to www.menti.com, and don't use the code yet, but if you are on your phone, you can certainly get there through your phone browser. If you're on a desktop watching, I would suggest you just open up another tab and just go get ready by going to www.menti.com, and then we will use that code. You can certainly put it in, but there's nothing to see right now. All right, so that's the one thing. The second is I'm going to leave this information up here at the very top, which is my email address in case you have questions. There is a portion where I do hope I'll be able to grab some from you by using the Menti platform, but let's see when we get there. All right, so today I definitely want to get started because we've heard really wonderful things this morning yet again, and we are about to jump into this homework. So I did hear from a couple of you on LinkedIn who told me, yes, you're going to have your homework done. And so let's just treat this like a little podcast, if you will, a little podcast with maybe some kind of interaction. So I'm going to talk pretty much a lot to you and with you today about that whole format that we have, that entire handout that we've had. And if you don't have it and you didn't get to join us last week, if you go onto the website, you'll see that there's a handout link that's there, and you can certainly open it in whatever platform you have, or you can feel free to download it if you feel like printing it. You don't have to. All right, so let's go and let's just embrace this journey, because we've heard so many women talking about their journeys and how they've, purposefully and mindfully embraced their journeys. I figured it would be very helpful to just begin to go back into what we talked about last week as a reminder. And I would gather that if you've had an opportunity to look through the entire handout, what you've noticed is that some of the audit, some of the planning that happened at the end of that handout actually embraces and highlights this and these particular things. Number one, precision, right? We talked about executive leadership element number one of being very precise in what you're trying to accomplish, being very precise in terms of what you're trying to attend to as an executive, but also just as an individual who is trying to learn and who is trying to lead and grow. Secondly, goals, right? You've got to have a goal, right? And I think last week, one of the images that I used happened to be an archery or a bullseye, right, for precision, but also in terms of a goal, writing down what you're trying to accomplish, talking with people, thinking about what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. Thirdly, collaboration. I think in every single presentation that we have heard, and even last week, every presentation that you may have been involved in, there's collaboration. So whether it's through a breakout room on Zoom, whether it's in a meeting, as we've heard our presidents talk about, whatever it is, right? And even our guest speakers, there was always some kind of collaboration. If we heard earlier, right, we heard about RISE, collaborating with one of our CUNY colleges, right? That's collaborating and working with others. And that becomes part of the executive leadership presence. Next is relationships, right? So when we think of relationships, it's relationship building. Every single one of us, regardless of what level you happen to be in the organization, it's critical and it's crucial to be able to build relationships with the people that you like and that you adore and that you would absolutely go out with. But it's also important to build relationships with those people that you may not, feel so great about too, right? It doesn't really matter at that point. It's building the strategic alliance. So I would use the word strategic alliance. And then finally, it's a practice. What we're doing today and what you have heard throughout these 2 days is really that this is a practice, that leadership is something, and I think I'm just going to borrow a couple of terms from what I heard earlier in one of our keynote speakers, from one of our trustees actually, which is executive presence is something that we have to keep working at, right? We have to keep working at it. And so today is just part of that process. So as we get ready for that process, let's just jump into this and let's see what's happening. So today I promised, or last week I promised, that we would talk about competitive advantage. And what does it mean to have that competitive advantage? And I said in that session or in my comments that in the business world, businesses have competitive advantages. And so what you see on the screen here in front of you are some of the more well-known brands, right? They're very, very well known. We know who they are. We pretty much know what they stand for because they have developed not just a cost competitive advantage, they have developed something else. And let me define this for you. So when we're talking about competitive advantage, I would define it as, or even Indeed.com, if you want to kind of go the quick route, you could even go Wikipedia. I'm a professor, I try not to do that, but sometimes it's just easier. The competitive advantage, quite frankly, and actually Michael Porter is a very good one if you want to read more about it, is an attribute that allows an organization to outperform its competitors. So I'll say that again. Competitive advantage is an attribute that allows an organization to outperform its competitors. So think of yourself as one of these brands here. You can be an Apple where you encourage people to think different. You could be a Coco Chanel, where you really want to strive to encourage women to step into an environment that may not be quite so friendly. You can be a Mercedes, right, where you stand out as not just a luxury car, but in terms of service. Anything breaks in a Mercedes, they're taking it no matter how long, and they will take care of it and fix it. You can be an Amazon, right? And an Amazon where you really step into the business world and you determine that there's a quick way to get people what they need. There's a cost-effective way to get people what they need. And you know what? If they don't like it, send it back. We'll take it. Not a problem. We'll send you something else. And if you don't get it, which has happened to me, and I'm sure it has happened to some of you out there, we'll send you another one anyway, right? And I actually remember this happening where someone sent me a package that they had ordered. I didn't receive it in probably like 3 weeks. And then eventually they sent me another one. So I ended up with 2 because the original one eventually arrived. Now, the one that I want to focus on today, right? It's not a cost advantage, competitive advantage. We're going to look at what's called a differentiation strategy, right? So I'm taking a business term and I'm applying it to you, because if you think about what we do as individuals, we have some of the same characteristics as a business, right? We budget, we plan, many of us sat in on branding, right? So we try to learn how to brand our package, if you will, our professional package. So a differentiation strategy is an approach that businesses use to develop their businesses by providing their customers with something unique, something different, and something distinct from their competitors. So let's think about how this works for us as we go down that executive road path. While each individual may have taken a different path to become a president, to become in another world and in different areas where they have become a chancellor, where they have become a CEO, where they have become a COO or a CFO or a managing director, right? Whatever it is, what that person has had to do is to learn how to figure out what differentiates him or her, and since it's women, we'll focus on the her, what that person has that will differentiate her from her competitors. Her competitors will be people who have the same kinds of experience, people who have the same kinds of roles in different jobs, and people who may, quite frankly, even have the same type of education, a little bit more or even a little bit less. The main objective of implementing a differentiation strategy is to increase your competitive advantage. And so that workbook, that handout that I gave you, is going to be your roadmap to help you differentiate yourselves from other people. So here we go. Let's take a little bit of a view of what we're trying to accomplish. So what's your competitive advantage? All right, well, first, what we want to do is to look at your results first from the communication style inventory. And secondly, we want to look at it from your leadership style inventory. So when we look at these, what we're going to do is I actually am going to open the Menti, and you're going to have to give me a moment to shift and to be able to share my screen with you so that you'll be able to see what I see once you answer. So this would be a great time, quite frankly, to go to www.menti.com, and I'll just take the W's off. So just go to Menti, MENTI.com, and you're going to look for the following. What you'll see on your phone will be right here in this little tiny space here. And then this larger one, which you're going to see right over here, is going to be what you'll see if you're on your desktop. So you'll go there, and I want you to put the code in 5369-9063, and you're going to just hang and wait for me, okay? So that I can actually share the screen. So just bear with me one moment, please. Okay, so it's going to take a moment for my screen to come up and to show what's happening. And I see that I've shared the incorrect screen. So let's make sure we stop the share and let me go back and share the correct screen with you so you have it. All right, here we go. All right, so if you just bear with me for one moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this go live, and I'm going to give you about a minute actually to go ahead, take your time, log in, don't panic. We're just going to have a little bit of silence while people are going in, and we're actually doing this. So this is live. If you are able, I see we've got one. Oh, they're coming in. This is awesome. I hope you guys can see what's happening. This is really great. Okay, I'm going to start a timer now, right? So the timer will be for 1 minute. Again, that's menti.com 5369-9063. I see these. Oh, you guys, this is great. Oh my goodness, I wonder who's going to win. Oh my goodness, I see we have quite a few analyzer thinkers already coming into the room. This is fantastic. Uh-oh, supporter relators are catching up. It's almost like this is a race, right? Oh my goodness. Now, what's really nice about this is as you guys are continuing to fill this in, I haven't put the countdown shutdown timer on yet, so keep going. What's really fantastic about this is what you get to see is across CUNY, the kinds of styles that tend to predominate, at least are predominant by those who have responded to the survey. This is wonderful. All right, I'm going to start the countdown. So we'll have 1 minute left. If you haven't gotten to menti.com, 5369-9063. Okay, we've got a little bit of time left. This is great, guys. Keep going. This is really amazing. I love it. Okay, so it looks like so far, looking at these responses, we are predominantly at supporter relators and analyzer thinkers so far. Okay, I'm watching my timer. Okay, probably about 30 seconds left or so. Okay, it looks like I restarted it. So it looks like we're at 1 minute. All right, so let me take 30 seconds and then I'm going to shut this down and then we will go. Okay, it's timer here. We've got 50 seconds. If you haven't taken it, you've still got time. If you're trying to tabulate and you have taken it, you're doing great. You've still got about 40 seconds left. Okay, this is looking like it normally would. I'm seeing lots of analyzer thinkers. Oh, the controller directors are starting to pick up. Promoter socializers, controller directors. Let's see what's happening. We've got 20 seconds left, folks. I almost feel like I should be going do, 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 but I won't. 10 seconds until the poll closes. Promoter socializers has jumped right up there. All right, we are going to close this down for this portion. All right, I see that also, just as an FYI, it is possible for you to ask questions within, right, each of the polls. So I'm going to take a quick look just to see how many. And I see we've got one question, and I'm going to let you guys see this on the screen. What are the differences in communication for a supporter relator versus an analyst thinker? We are getting ready to get into that. So that's a great question. So I'm going to mark that one as not answered yet because I don't want to do that. And I think supporters just follow directions and don't add items. We'll talk about that, right? So we'll see what each one actually does. All right, so now we've got one more, okay, that we're going to take, and I'm going to forward this now over to the next one, which is the leadership style assessment. And so let's see what we've got going with leadership. Okay, you should be able to get into this now. Please go ahead. Yes, here we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start the counter in 3, 2, 1. Whoops. Okay, so we've got 50 seconds with your leadership style. And it looks like there are quite a few human skill, which does not surprise me, given the fact that we are at an academic environment for the most part. Okay, we've got a lot of conceptual. Okay, technical and conceptual, you're tied. 30 seconds left until the polling closes. And I do see some questions. All right, this is great, guys. Okay, so it looks like human skill is leading the way. They're leading the charge. 105 so far. All right, conceptual skill. We've got 4 seconds, 3, try to get it in, try to get it in, try to get it in, last second. Okay, voting is now closed for the moment. All right, you can still go in and you should be able to still do this, but at the last minute, but it is closed for right now. So let's go back and let's take a quick look at these numbers, all right? So first, I see we've got technical skill, 37, human skill, 112. That's pretty high, again, for those who happen to respond. And then 50, right? And let's just look at percentages perhaps, right? If we can. All right, so that means 56% of all of you who responded focus on a leadership style of human skill. 25% of those who responded focus on conceptual skills. And then 19% of you focus on technical skills. That's your style. So I see the predominant style of those who replied, 56% human skill. All right, let's see if I can go back and take a peek at this and get percentages down. So it's pretty close, right? 37% and 36% of you who responded are at supporter, relator, or analyzer thinkers. And then 16% promoter socializers, and then finally controller directors, 12%. Now, I'm going to start with this as we get into the discussion. So please feel free to continue to ask questions and place them in the Q&A. I'm going to have to juggle between a couple of screens. So I'm going to pull this screen down now, and I'm going to go back to my presentation so that you can see some of the differences in terms of style and in terms of what each of these things means and where these things differ. So let me stop sharing this screen. And let's go back to this. All right, so let's go back and share again. All right, so you're not going to see me for a second, and that's fine because you don't need to, right? So I want to focus on this piece here, the communication style results. And I promise you I will go back and look at your questions, but I do want to get through this. So when we think about communication styles and the results that you have, these are pretty much in a very typical grid. And the grid looks like what you see in front of you. We have a controller director, promoter socializer, and I'm going to stop there. Because if you happen to notice at the very, very top, it says high assertiveness. And so those who tend to sit at the controller director or at the promoter socializer level tend to be those who are very, very assertive. They are high assertives. All right, if you look down underneath, right, where it says in the middle, it says emotion, right? If you look down underneath there, it says analyzer, thinker, and supporter relators. Those particular communication styles tend to be less assertive, and they tend to be low assertive. Now, I'm going to go back. Well, actually, I won't. Let me stay here because I want to answer that first question that I saw, which is really, what is the difference between analyzer thinker and a supporter relator? Okay, so if you think about the styles, all right, and look solely at the grid where it says asks, and if you look over to the right where it says high expressive. So supporter relators are high expressive, so high on the emotion, but low assertive. They tend to ask. Supporter relators tend to be the individuals who will listen more. You have incredible skills of being awesome listeners. You also tend to be the people that people will go to because they know that you will listen to them, right? So if someone comes to you and says, oh my goodness, something happened in the workplace and I want to run this by you, or something happened, with my friend and I want to run this by you. What do you think about this? Or I had a really horrible day, or I had a great day. And they know that you're going to sit there and you're going to listen and you'll be genuinely engaged in that conversation. Where that style differs with analyzer thinkers is that analyzer thinkers are low expressive and they are also low assertive. So low expressive and low assertive. Analyzer thinkers tend to be the ones, and I'm going to go cheat and look at my sheet so I can see it. You won't see it, but I'm going to go and take a peek just so that I remember. Analyzer thinkers, 37%. So the analyzer thinkers are the folks who tend to be very numbers focused, very tech focused, right? They're also very, very detail oriented. Now, if we go up and we look at controller directors and we look at promoter socializers, these are the folks who tell. Controller directors, on the other hand, let's look at this quadrant. Controller directors are low expressive and they are high assertive. So we'll look at what that sounds like in a moment. Promoter socializers, however, are high assertive, but they're also high expressive. So controller directors might come across as, you've got 3 minutes, I'm going to talk to you for 3 minutes and I'm going to tell you what to do. Very little affect. They might be kind of funny, right? Because they have learned to do so, but the style is very, very direct. I'm telling you that this is what I need and I need it now. Promoter socializers, on the other hand, are high assertive and high expressive. And they're high assertive, high expressive, and they might sort of say, hey, how's it going? Listen, I need you to do this for me. Wondering how you feel about that. Oh, is that challenging? All right, let me see what I can do to help you, but I still need to get that done. So they are tell at the top end and ask at the bottom end. Let's keep going, all right? Because I do want to get into this, and I know you've got it in front of you somewhere if you do. If you have it in front of you, you can follow along with me in your handout. Now, the communication style strengths, let's get into what that is. Communication style strengths of controller directors, right? Those are the commanders, the commander in chief. They value getting the job done and they are incredibly results oriented. So if you happen to be any of the other three styles, the best way to deal with a controller director is to make sure that you focus on results. Okay, focus on results. Now, I'm saying this because I've received some messages, emails, some LinkedIn messages around people saying that, well, I might be a little more introverted or I don't speak up as much. That's okay. Believe it or not, I'm probably more introverted than people believe, but I really am, right? I'm much more introverted. I kind of sit on the middle somewhere. So what you do is you kind of plan your I don't want to say attack because I don't want to use war terms, right? Even though there are war rooms, right, in business. But you kind of line up what you might say, how you might say it ahead of time, give yourself some outlines, and then know that the controller director is listening for results and how that's going to happen. The promoter socializer is motivation and celebration oriented. We are the entertainers, right? Now, I tend to sit on all four because I've learned to do that. My natural, probably entertainer, because I've been entertaining my entire life. I've been on the stage since I was 3 years old. And so I've kind of learned to do that. But also very motivational and celebration oriented. So here's what this sounds like in the workplace. Oh my gosh, we just finished this project. This is fantastic. Let's go get lunch, right? Or, they want to high five, they might hug. Well, pre-pandemic, might hug a little bit, right? Just want to make sure that everybody gets, rewarded, that everybody is given kudos for what they do, because it's important for that promoter socializer. And they also enjoy working and helping with other people. Let's go down to the supporter relator. The supporter relator is relationship oriented, and I've talked about that already, but I'll highlight that they tend to be harmonizers. Supporter relators do not like conflict at all by any stage. No way, don't like it. They don't enjoy it. And so if there's any way for them to create harmony with a group of people who are working together, that's what they will do. They will create that harmony. Analyzer thinkers, very idea oriented, believe it or not, but they are, because they're really touching the details. They analyze, they assess things, they kind of look at big picture, very holistic. They also value accuracy. So if you are somebody who receives emails, or you receive communication or something, or in a spoken word, and someone makes an error, that analyzer thinker is like, that's not correct, that's not the right number. And it really does kind of agitate that person. So with all of these, I would say these are the strengths, excellent strengths. I'm going to quickly go through what some of the trouble spots are. So because the people at the top of that quadrant tend to be more tell and talk, might not be great listeners, and they might, particularly with promoter socializers, may not hear details, right? Missing it because we're more on the talk side. The analyzer thinkers and the supporter relators, right? The analyzer thinker may focus too much on detail. And again, the supporter relator may give in a little bit too easily because we don't want conflict. So what does that sound like? Okay, you know what, whatever you guys decide, that's fine with me, right? Even though inside they may not really want to agree with that. The analyzer thinker may come across as flat. It says terse here, which really means that they come across as kind of short, right? But can be a little bit flat, can be perceived that way. The person who is the controller director likes to argue. Now, when I say likes to argue, they like debate. And we heard one of the presidents talk about this, right? That this is important for her to hear in the room, respectfully, people debating ideas. And so it becomes something that you want to become comfortable with if you're not comfortable with it, or become more comfortable with it if you're talking with somebody who happens to be a controller director. The promoter socializer can be oh so over dramatic, right? It's so awful. This is so terrible, or this is so fantastic, right? So those are some trouble spots that we want to keep in our minds. Now let's transition to some of the leadership styles, and this is going to be at a very basic level. Normally when I teach this, I'm doing this either for a semester or I'm doing this for a couple of days. So let's look at the basics of leadership styles. So this that you took, the assessment that you took, is actually from a 3-skilled approach from Robert Katz, who 1955 came up with this approach. So I'd figure I'd give you a little academic background for why you're taking what you're taking and what it means. And you've noticed that there are 3 different skill sets, right, in terms of leadership. The first one, technical skill, and I'm going to come to questions in a moment because I see some more coming in. So technical skill, proficient in a specific type of work or activity, right? That's the technical person. The human skill person who, and I have to go look at this again because this is so high, right? 112 of you, right? So I think we said 56%. So that's half of the people who responded have knowledge about being with people or being able to work with people. And then the other is the ability, the conceptual skill, the ability to work with broad concepts. So let me finish this and then I'll take a peek at these questions just to see what may have come in. Now, these 3 are important and crucial, and I'm going to take myself off of the screen for just a moment so you can focus on this, right? As leaders move through the levels of an organization, meaning going from the lowest level to the highest levels. Skill important moves from the technical to the human to the conceptual. So what do you see in front of you? You see all three levels represented at the supervisory level, at the middle management level, and then at the top management level. So let's break down what that means. If we look at the supervisor level, right, which is where many of us are sitting, right, or have sat, right, for many years, at the supervisor level, the very lowest skill that becomes necessary in that role is the conceptual, although I might take issue with that, and I'll explain why as we talk through this. The most important skill tends to be the technical skill, because the supervisor is the one that is closest to the people who are direct reports, the one who has to make sure that, you know, the enrollment management spreadsheets are done correctly, that, you know, student life, that we are counting the proper students and doing the right things, filling out the proper paperwork. In registrar's office, right? We know in registrar's office, you got to make sure that you are billing people properly, that you are, you know, charging for the right thing, that students are also able to register for courses when they are supposed to, right? So the supervisor tends to be very, very technical and very detail oriented, and also should have some human skill. In the middle, right, the middle manager, you see it looks kind of even. Some would argue that the middle manager really needs to be almost a little less technically savvy, but more so human savvy, right? Human skills, and a little bit more on the conceptual side. If we go all the way up to the top level, you see how that changes. And this will answer the question of what some people have. Sometimes people have the question of this, and I get it regardless of who my client is, regardless of whether it is a private client, a nonprofit client, or a city agency. Doesn't matter. Same question. Why are we getting this training and not the people at the very top of the organization? Get that question all the time. If you kind of look at what you see here, at least according to how CAT's framework places it, the people at the very, very top are really not trying to be very technically savvy. One, because they don't have the time, but two, because they're focusing on the last two and really the last one, which is the conceptual. The conceptual idea is about understanding where the organization is trying to go. Where does it fit into the larger landscape? When we're talking larger landscape, it can be local, it can be global. And then how do we get people who are their direct reports to feed down the line, right? That concept, that broad picture, that big picture, so that everyone is aligned. Now, remember a little bit earlier, I said I would take issue with the supervisor perhaps not being so conceptual. I would encourage, and I do often encourage, people who are at that supervisory level to begin to understand the conceptual, because the more that you can understand the bigger picture, the easier is it for you to be able to talk to your direct reports and to say, this is why we're doing what we do. It just makes it ever so much easier. Now, how do we apply this? Okay, so all of this has application. Your leadership style, your communication style, it all has meaning and application. Number one, it's applicable to leaders at all levels of the organization, at every level. Because remember earlier we heard, it's not, your destination leader. It is really destination and continual practice leadership. Also, it provides insights into the individual's leadership, right? So we really pretty much get this idea that we can get insight into our own learning. And this is something that I do multiple times throughout the year. I don't just stop. Throughout the year, almost, maybe once a quarter, I'm sitting and I'm looking and I'm thinking, have I changed in my style? If so, how? If I'm working with this kind of a client, how do I have to communicate differently here than I will with another? If I am being too focused on technical or too too focused on conceptual. How do I bring it down for folks? And when I say bring it down, it doesn't mean that it's an insult. It means I have to just change the way that I frame what I'm discussing. And then finally, these test scores are just the beginning for you. I would encourage you maybe next year, do it again, see if something has changed in both of these styles, because it allows you to learn about what areas you need to grow in. So what do? We won in terms of competitive advantage, try to do the following. We try to determine what you want to be known for. All right, you want to determine what you want to be known for. You also want to research your target audience. So let's back up to step one, and then I'll go into researching your target audience. When I'm talking about what you want to be known for, do you want to be known for being conceptual, that you can think big picture? Do you want to be known in the workplace as somebody who can flex through all four of those styles? We all rest in one or two, but man, the one who can be flexible and can move from one to the other, that's somebody that will absolutely stand out from others in the workplace. Research your target audience. So if you're trying to move up and be promoted in your current place of employment, then by all means, know your target audience, know who that manager is, understand how they think, understand how he or she may view the world, how he or she views positions. If you're looking for something outside of your current place of employment, same thing. Do your research and try to understand what your target audience might be looking for. 3, develop what will make you stand out from others. Those are your differentiators, and that becomes your differentiation strategy. Okay, it becomes your differentiation strategy. 4, we've done this last week and we'll do it again today. Work on creating your personal brand, right? And then finally, tell your story to others. Once you've created your differentiators, and once you've determined who your target audience is, how they think, how they may receive communication, then tell your story after you create your brand around that. For a very long time, and still for my business, my first business name was actually Teach, Lead, Inspire. Well, actually, my first business name was not that. My first business name in the 90s was Albritton Associates, after my mother, right? My mother's maiden name was Albritton. But as I came back into consulting, I called it Teach, Lead, Inspire. And I wanted to have that, and I still use it, even though my brand name has changed. The very essence, the very value of what I do when I teach, or I lead, or I inspire, or I encourage others to teach, lead, inspire. That is my brand. That's what I do in the classroom. I try to. That's what I try to do with my clients. And it kind of gives me a way to be responsible. When you have others tell your story, use LinkedIn, and we've got a session around that too, right? Use your LinkedIn, talk with your manager if you're comfortable, find a mentor, a sponsor, an advocate, somebody who can tell your story for you. They become your extended branding person, if you will. All right, so that takes care of this piece for the moment. And so now what we want to do is we want to look into what we can do in terms of getting to some of these questions, but also how you can use that document that I shared with you. So I want to go into some questions now. So let me do that. And let's see what we've got coming on here. All right, so I've got some leadership style questions. Let me see, and you're not going to see them. I just want to kind of roll through them. And I want to see if I can highlight some comments. So bear with me as I look through and see if I can highlight some comments and some questions. I think, let's see, the supporter just follows directions. We got that one. What if your results have I was waiting for that one. I knew somebody had this. What if your results have relatively tied categories for the highest score? Okay, if they are relatively tied, what that tells me is that you have learned to navigate between those two styles really well. Like those two are your comfort zones. So whoever asked that question, if, for example, you happen to be controller director and then also an analyzer thinker, which is possible, right? So what that tells me is in certain situations, you would really be very, very direct and you would be looking for that. And then in other situations, you might sit back and be a little bit more analytical. What your goal is for all of us and for all of you is to try to learn to be flexible between all of them. Okay, to the best of your ability, not to reach perfection in all of them. That's not what I'm saying. It's to be able to flex to other people's styles. All right, so let's see what we've got here as another question. What is a conceptual skill? This is a great question, okay? A conceptual skill is when somebody is really looking, for example, at strategic planning. So those of us who, and I do strategic planning, not just for my business, but I have sat in on strategic planning sessions because I tend to facilitate strategic planning sessions for organizations. So at the strategic level, right, somebody at the top or your top management team is actually trying to figure out how to move the organization to achieve its goals. Those goals may have remained the same. They may change, but they won't know until they really look at all of the data. They look at the playing field, which is around them, and then they try to make decisions. The best example I can give you is what happened around the pandemic, right? And what we had to do and what people at the top of the organization had to do and how they had to scramble and how they had to think, okay, well, how do we make this work? Now, that's at the top, but even down further down, right? For the rest of us, for me as an instructor, it's okay, wait a minute. Now I've got students who are in the classroom who are not choosing to take online classes like my previous students may have been. Now I have to change things. And so now I have to think differently, think bigger picture. Same thing with those of you now, because we're all working remotely. Thinking conceptually is how do I make this all work? That's the conceptual skill. Okay, so we've got that. What does it mean when your technical and human skills are tied? Same thing like with the communication style, right? If those two are tied, it's going to depend on what you're doing. I would gather that there are moments when you really are very high, whoever that person is or those people are, that you are very high in terms of trying to help people feel comfortable, but you also have a very good skill in being very technically oriented. Great example. So for example, we'll use registrar's office, right? You want to be forward facing, and I'm just using that because it just came to the top of my head. Every area that and somehow faces a student, right? We have to have that. But in the registrar's office, we use that as an example. There's tons of technical skill that you need. Things need to be done right. They need to be detailed. You need to analyze. But when facing a learner or when facing even faculty, right, or someone, you want to have that human skill. And so I will bet that somewhere you're really good at going back and forth between those two. I like this. Somebody, yep, you highlighted it. Leadership style can be flexible based on which setting you are in. Students, programming, staff, or campus. Absolutely on point with that. I'm going to bounce to over to the communication. And also, I want to see what we've got in terms of questions there. And then I'm going to open another screen for you so that you can just ask me some general questions as well. Okay, so I think we've got that. Oh, wow, here's another one, 3 areas. So I hope the person who asked about being close in 3 areas, I hope that I was able to answer that question for you as well. Okay, so let me pull up the document to show you how to walk through this document. I've got a few minutes left and I do want to just take some open questions. So let me open up the question, the Q&A slide for you. Okay, so if you are on your phone or if you happen to be, again, on your desktop, feel free to answer or ask any additional questions if you'd like on the Ask Me a Question slide. I am seeing it. You won't see it right now because I am actually broadcasting. All right, so one of the things that I want to share with you is going to be how do you work through this whole thing? That's right. Okay, so here we go. Let's do this as a share screen. So what you're going to see is going to be the middle of that handout, all right, that I shared with you. I will make it a little bit tinier so it's not totally blowing it on somebody's screen or phone. All right, so this is what we've gone through, and I want to encourage you that if you are on page 9, that's where I'm going to be. So this is how you determine your differentiation and how you create your strategy. Just give me about 3 to 4 minutes to go through this slide with you, or through this screen with you. So your professional destination, where do you want to go? Remember, you have to have a goal and you want to be precise. Saying, I want to be promoted, not enough, right? I want to be promoted to because, or I want to do this work, and that work may actually involve you being promoted. So pick your professional destination. For me, I can remember years ago wanting to be the consultant, right? And I've been doing it for a couple of decades now, here and there. And that was that was my goal, was to really be a really strong consultant. And I'm going to just keep going until I get where I want to go, right? But every once in a while, I have to go through this process. Check off what your communication style is or your styles are. So if you're pretty close, then maybe, if you're a predominantly promoter socializer and you're one away from an analyzer thinker, maybe, just indicate that you have that. Indicate what your leadership skills results are, and then you want to go into your SWOT analysis, another business term, but someone who I will leave nameless because I didn't ask him for permission to say his name. He happens to work at one of the larger banks in New York, and he was a commissioner at one point. And one of the things that he taught me a very long time ago was to sit down and to do a SWOT analysis. And what you do is you're going to look at your strengths. So you can now take the strengths from your communication. You can take your strengths from your human style or your technical style, whichever one is high, and then say, these are my strengths. This is what I'm really good at. My weaknesses are going to be the trouble spots. Where do I need to pay attention? So if you're a promoter socializer and you don't hear details, that's a weakness and you want to place that there. Now, once you have your strengths and your weaknesses together, now you want to look at your opportunities and your threats. Your opportunities are going to be taking the strengths that you have and the potential development that you can use. How are you then going to create opportunities or seek out opportunities? Remember, sometimes they fall in your lap, very often they don't. Very often they fall in your lap because people see what you do, right? And then what are the threats to that? Now, for me, when I first did that many years ago, I'm a single parent and my daughter was very young. So a threat for me was, wow, what kind of work can I take on where I can still be present for my daughter? At that time, that was a threat, not like it's attacking me, but it's something that would keep me from achieving my goal if I didn't pick properly. I chose to teach, right? And so it's worked out very well and to continue to do that. And I also chose to consult. Another threat might be, I don't have the degree, or I don't have the certification, or I don't have the experience. So if I don't have the experience and I want to look back at my strengths, I want to look at my weaknesses, and I want to figure out how I close the gap. Okay, so that's the beginning, right, of the SWOT analysis. And what you do with that is no different than what any business does. Now you've got here the big picture. And what I did here is the big picture, that's conceptual. The big picture is I took every single workshop that is being offered and I placed it on the side, right? So if it's branding, if it's career mapping, if it's networking, if it's a personal brand, you can now figure out and write down what's your skill and your goal. What are your actions around that? What outcomes do you hope to achieve, and what's your timeline, right? I'll move down to one more, I'm not going to go through all of these, but just one more. If you want to focus on the career mapping first, now you get to write and say, let me look at career mapping. What do I need to do? What kinds of projects do I want to be involved in? What kinds of projects can I ask to be involved in? And how can I show that I'm ready? And what is my timeline for doing that? So if your timeline is spring 2022, then by all means, go for it. But now you get to backtrack into the things that you will be able to accomplish. All right, so that's how you use this handout, right? You use it to really make it work for you. Make it your map. This becomes your roadmap to making sure that you can be successful and that you know when to ask for help and what to do with that. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing this. No, I'm not going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to share what, no, I am going to stop sharing the screen. Let me stop sharing the screen here. All right, and I'm going to close. I think I'll leave this piece up just so you guys are reminded if you ever want to, get in touch with me. And I'm going to look and see if there are questions, all right, that I can answer that I may have missed, because I feel like I may have missed, and I only have 2 or 3 minutes to actually get to those questions. Okay, is it possible to be both a promoter socializer and a supporter relator? Absolutely, it's absolutely possible. And again, it's going to depend on what you're doing, right? And how, you can actually make that work for you. But it's absolutely possible to be a promoter socializer. Let's see, I will show the box with the 4 communication styles. I would also let you know that it's in the handout that you have that's available to you. The only one that is not in the handout is going to be the leadership. So if it's the 4 communication styles, that's absolutely in the handout, and that is available on the website if you've missed it. All right, so I made sure to put that there for you. Okay, let's see. What are some strategies that you can use to improve the human? All right, I'll give you 1 or 2, and then I'm going to begin to wrap up because I have probably 3 minutes. All right, so some strategies that you can use to improve the human is, when you're in, even online, and it's very challenging to do this now because we're not face-to-face like we usually are. I would invite people to a Zoom coffee. We have a few of our lady friends, my colleagues, that we just say, listen, it's time for coffee. Let's just get together. We haven't talked for a while, and invite them. I'd love to be able to talk with you, to spend some time with you just for 15 minutes, 30 minutes maybe, and have a virtual coffee. The other way to improve the human is in your writing, right? So in your writing, what you might want to do is to actually think about how you write certain things to people. Have the greeting, smile, I tend to say, right, while you're writing, because sometimes that actually helps kind of change your mindset. The other thing you can do is to ask your friends, what can I do? Or your close colleagues that you trust. Is there anything that I have been saying, or is there any way that you perceive that I'm not being as human-centered as I could be, and take that feedback and then run with it and try to figure out ways that you can improve it. Usually when you're trying to improve the human side, it's becoming more on the supporter relator and also on the promoter socializer side. Let me see if there's one more, and then I'm going to just wrap. Okay, let's see. We've got this. Oh, a good book to read regarding leadership skills. Tons of them. I will say them. Read anything by John C. Maxwell. Those are great books to read. Lencioni, he talks about leadership and teams. His last name, Lencioni, is, I have to close my Lencioni, but he's a great author. But anything by John C. Maxwell. There's also a book about why nice girls don't get the corner office. That's another one. It's a little older, but it's a good stable book. And a lot of the questions that you all are asking, you'll actually find in that book. book. Really easy one to find. All right, I'm going to share one last screen and then I'm going to say my goodbyes to you because I know it is lunch. We were running a little over and I know that people are dropping off and trying to go eat. I might be one of them because I'm a little hungry, but I just want to share this with you. And so I'm going to fix my screen here for just a moment and change that. And I'm just going to share, if you are interested in actually trying to become part of a leadership circle, where you want to become part of an emerging leadership circle, I will be starting that. This is my website. It is the future home of, I'm still building it, but it will be ready come summer 2021. It's great to keep up with me at Baruch, at my email address there, but I try to keep my worlds separate. That's another tip. Leadership coaching, if you want coaching, you just want to ask me questions, please reach out to me on LinkedIn if you just want to reach and ask me questions. If you just want to email, you can email me at info@dpatrickconsulting.com. And if you have your phone, you can actually put your phone up and hit the QR code and it will actually take you to my website. So please, let's stay connected. I would love to be able to connect with as many of you as possible. This is a labor of love for me. I have done this for years. It's such an honor and a privilege to be able to do what I do and what I've done for 2 conferences now with CUNY. I appreciate CUNY and I appreciate every single one of you who stayed on as long as you did to participate in my talk and in my presentation. I wish everyone all of the best in everything that you do. And I am certain that you are going to actually not just stay connected to each other, but to achieve your goals of enhancing your executive presence. I have every faith and confidence in all of you. Thank you so much for watching. And let me say goodbye to you. Thank you so much. Enjoy lunch and then come back. And when you come back, go into those breakout sessions. I hope to see you there.